to make off. They found this ship exceedingly rich, being laden chiefly with sugar, skins, and tobacco, and in gold 40,000 moidores, beside chains and trinkets of considerable value, particularly a cross set with diamonds designed for the King of Portugal, which they afterwards presented to the Governor of Caiana, by whom they were obliged. Elated with this booty, they had nothing now to think of but some safe retreat, where they might give themselves up to all the pleasures luxury and wantonness might bestow, and for the present pitched upon a place called the Devil's Islands, in the river of Surinam, on the coast of Caiana, where they arrived and found the civillest reception imaginable, not only from the governor and factory, but their wives, who exchanged wares, and drove a considerable trade with them. They seized in this river a sloop, and by her gained intelligence that a brigantine had also sailed in company with her from Rhode Island, laden with provisions for the coast, a welcome cargo. They growing short in the sea store, and, as Sancho says, no adventures to be made without belly timber, one evening, as they were rummaging their mine of treasure, the Portuguese prize, this expected vessel was descried at the masthead, and Roberts, imagining nobody could do the business so well as himself, takes 40 men in the sloop, and goes in pursuit of her. But a fatal accident followed this rash, though inconsiderable adventure, for Roberts, thinking of nothing less than bringing in the brigantine that afternoon, never troubled his head about the sloop's provision, nor inquired what there was on board to subsist such a number of men, but out he sails after the expected prize, which he not only lost further sight of, but after 8 days contending with contrary winds and currents, found themselves 30 leagues to leeward. The current still opposing their endeavours, and perceiving no hopes of beating up to their ship, they came to an anchor, and inconsiderately sent away the boat to give the rest of the company notice of their condition, and to order the ship to them. But too soon. Even the next day their wants made them sensible of their infatuation, for their water was all expended, and they had taken no thought how they should be supplied till either their ship came or the boat returned, which was not likely to be under 5 or 6 days. Here, like Tantalus, they almost famished in sight of the fresh streams and lakes, being drove to such extremity that at last they were forced to tear up the floor of the cabin, and patch up a sort of tub or tray with rope yarns to paddle ashore, and fetch off immediate supplies of water to preserve life. After some days the long-wished-for boat came back, but with the most unwelcome news in the world. For Kennedy, who was lieutenant, and left, in absence of Roberts, to command the privateer and prize, was gone off with both. This was mortification with a vengeance, and you may imagine that they did not depart without some hard speeches from those that were left, and had suffered by their treachery. And that there need be no further mention of this Kennedy, I shall leave Captain Roberts to vent his wrath in a few oaths and execrations, and follow the other, whom we may reckon from that time as steering his course toward Execution Dock. Kennedy was now chosen captain of the revolted crew, but could not bring his company to any determined resolution. Some were for pursuing the old game, but the greater part of them seemed to have inclinations to turn from those evil courses and get home privately, for there was no act of pardon in force. Therefore they agreed to break up, and every man to shift for himself, as he should see occasion. The first thing they did was to part with the great Portuguese prize, and having the master of the sloop, whose name I think was Kane, aboard, whom, they said, was a very honest fellow, for he had humoured them upon every occasion, told them of the brigantine that Roberts went after, and when the pirates first took him, he complimented them at any odd rate, telling them that they were welcome to his sloop and cargo, and wished that the vessel had been larger and the loading richer for their sakes. To this good-natured man they gave the Portuguese ship, which was then above half loaded, 3 or 4 negroes, and all his own men, who returned thanks to his kind benefactors, and departed. Captain Kennedy in the Rover sailed to Barbados, near which island they took a very peaceable ship belonging to Virginia. The commander was a Quaker, whose name was Knott. He had neither pistol, sword, nor cutlass on board, and Mr. Knott appearing so passive to all they said to him, some of them thought this was a good opportunity to go off, and accordingly 8 of the pirates went aboard, and he carried them safe to Virginia. They made the Quaker a present of 10 chests of sugar, 10 rolls of Brazil tobacco, 30 moidores, and some gold dust, in all to the value of about £250. They also made presents to the sailors, some more, some less, and lived a jovial life all the while they were upon their voyage, Captain Knott giving them their way, nor indeed could he help himself, unless he had taken an opportunity to surprise them when they were either drunk or asleep, for awake they wore arms upon the ship, and put him in a continual terror, it not being his principle, or the sect's, to fight, unless with art and collusion. He managed these weapons well, till he arrived at the Capes, and afterwards 4 of these pirates went off in a boat, which they had taken with them for more easily making their escapes, and made up the bay towards Maryland, but were forced back by a storm into an obscure place of the country, where, meeting with good entertainment among the planters, they continued several days without being discovered to be pirates. In the meantime, Captain Knott, leaving 4 others aboard his ship who intended to go to North Carolina, made what haste he could to discover to Mr. Spotswood, the governor, what sort of passengers he had been forced to bring with him, who by good fortune got them seized, and search being made after the others, who were revelling about the country, they were also taken, and all tried, convicted, and hanged. 2 Portuguese Jews who were taken on the coast of Brazil, and whom they had brought with them to Virginia, being the principal evidences. The latter had found means to lodge part of their wealth with the planters, who never brought it to account, but Captain Knott surrendered up everything that belonged to them that were taken aboard, even what they presented to him, in lieu of such things as they had plundered him of in their passage, and obliged his men to do the like. Some days after the taking of the Virginiamen last mentioned, in cruising at the latitude of Jamaica, Kennedy took a sloop bound thither from Boston, loaded with bread and flour. Aboard of this sloop went all the hands who were for breaking the gang, and left those behind that had a mind to pursue further adventures. Among the former was Kennedy their captain, of whose honour they had such a despicable notion, that they were about to throw him overboard when they found him in the sloop, as fearing he might betray them all at their return to England. He having, in his childhood, been bred a pickpocket, and, before he became a pirate, a housebreaker, both professions that these gentlemen have a very mean opinion of. However, Captain Kennedy, by taking solemn oaths of fidelity to his companions, was suffered to proceed with them. In this company there was but one that pretended any skill in navigation, for Kennedy could neither read nor write, he being preferred to the command merely for his courage, which indeed he had often signalized, particularly in taking the Portuguese ship, and he proved to be a pretender only, for shaping their course to Ireland, where they agreed to land, they ran away to the north-west coast of Scotland, and there were tossed about by hard storms of wind for several days without knowing where they were, and in great danger of perishing. At length they pushed the vessel into a little creek, and went all ashore, leaving the sloop at anchor for the next comers. The whole company refreshed themselves at a little village about 5 miles from the place where they had left the sloop, and passed there for shipwrecked sailors, and no doubt might have travelled on without suspicion, but the mad and riotous manner of their living on the road occasioned their journey to be cut short, as we shall observe presently. Kennedy and another left them here, and travelling to one of the seaports, shipped themselves for Ireland, and arrived there in safety. 6 or 7 wisely withdrew from the rest, travelled at their leisure, and got to their much desired port of London without being disturbed or suspected. But the main gang alarmed the country wherever they came, drinking and roaming at such a rate that people shut themselves up in their houses, in some places not daring to venture out against so many mad fellows. In other villages they treated the whole town, squandering their money as if, like Aesop, they wanted to lighten their burthens. This expensive manner of living procured 2 of their drunken stragglers to be knocked on the head, they being found murdered in the road, and their money taken from them. All the rest, to the number of 17, as they drew nigh to Edinburgh, were arrested, and thrown into jail upon suspicion of they knew not what. However, the magistrates were not long at a loss for proper accusations, for two of the gang offering themselves for evidences were accepted of.